Hola, ¿qué tal? Welcome to Vamos, your DELE A2 podcast. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking about orthography and why it matters for the DELE A2. Are you ready? Vamos! Okay, so let me start by saying that in Spanish, luckily, writing is much easier than in English. Most of Spanish is completely transparent, so any word that you hear or any sound that you hear, you will have to write. This is very helpful because there are no silent letters, as we saw last week with the pronunciation. So this goes both ways. When you see a new word, you'll be able to pronounce it correctly, and when you pronounce a word correctly, you'll be able to write it correctly as well. So it's a win-win. But we do have a couple of letters that you have to pay close attention to. Do you want to know which ones? Let's go. The first one is letter H. Letter H is completely silent. It disappears. For example, let's take these two words. Hola, which means hello, and hola, which means wave. As you can hear, there is no difference at all, but the meaning is completely different. Now, how do we know which words have an H and which don't? It's just a matter of memorization. There is no way around it. This is like English. I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do to help you. But this is also important for the next two letters, letter B and letter V. In Spanish, we have those two letters which sound exactly the same. So, for example, if I tell you vale, vale, you will not know if that starts with a B or with a V. It's just through context and through learning that you will memorize that vale starts with a V, although the sound is b, exactly the same as if it were written with a B. That's why this is a common spelling mistake even for native speakers. Next up is the letter double L and the letter Y. These two letters in my variant of Spanish sound exactly the same. So raya and raya are exactly the same from sound, but they mean two different things. How do we know which one to use? Again, we're going to have to use the context to help us out. Finally, I would have to give you a special warning if you're learning Spanish from Latin America, because you will have one extra letter that is going to cause trouble. It's letter C and letter S, because in South America, the th and the sound that we have in northern Spain, that kind of lisp, doesn't exist. So words like ciudad, here in Spain we hear that th, and we automatically know, okay, this is going to start with a C and an I. But in Latin America, you will not know because it will sound like ciudad. And so you will easily write it with an S, and that will be a mistake. So in the case that you're learning Spanish from Latin America, which I repeat for the DELE A2 is completely fine, just be careful when you're writing, practice with these types of sounds so that you don't make any mistakes. Now, orthography is much more than just spelling of words. We do have some other things to take into account. First of all, it's going to be punctuation. Now, what does this mean? It's the dots at the end of the sentence and the commas. And I know this might be very technical because I am a language teacher and yes, I focus on those things which nobody else cares about. But let me tell you, the other examiners are language teachers as well, and they do care about punctuations. My main tip for you would at least to be just not to write a whole very long sentence without anything in between. Try to put some dots in between. This will give you the opportunity to use linking words. So if you're interested in that, I will have a coming up episode, so subscribe so that you receive the notification whenever it's ready. Now, another very tiny thing to worry about, but that does have its importance, it's accents in Spanish. So this is something that English doesn't have, but in Spanish, we do have a little mark that goes on top of certain letters, which is going to tell you where you have to stress the word. So for example, if we have a word like canción, we know that the on is going to be the strong sound because it has the accent at the end. I'm just going to give you two tips that are going to help you get the best grade possible with the least possible effort. So the first one is words exactly like the one that I just mentioned, canción. any word that ends in ion in Spanish is going to have an accent. Even words in on at the end with that stress at the end. So let me give you some examples. We have words like canción, balón, corazón. They all have that accent at the end. Now, another type of word that always has the accent at the end is the type of word that ends in ia sound in Spanish. What do I mean? Let me show you some examples. Geografía, panadería, pescadería. This ia sound that you hear at the end is going to be marked with the accent. This is because it's going to split the sound in two. So it's not going to be carnicería, carnicería. It's going to be carnicería. That's the correct spelling, carnicería, with the accent. This is quite helpful also for you to know how to pronounce certain words. Okay, and last is capital letters. This is a very nerdy thing, and I know it's not essential for the A2 level, but I wanted to share with you one of the tips that I could give you to improve your writing. So in Spanish, we have many less capital letters than in other languages. What do I mean? Let's take a look. If we write martes, the day of the week, we won't have a capital letter in Spanish. It's with the lowercase m, martes. Same thing if we're talking about months. If we say junio, it's not going to be capitalized. We're going to have a lowercase j, junio. So this is extremely helpful because there are going to be words that you're going to be using all of the time. So whenever you're talking about months and days of the week, you're not going to be using a capital letter. And this also applies to another category, which is generally mistaken for foreigners, which is languages and nationalities. So in English, we would say French and we would put a capital letter. Not so in Spanish. We will use the lowercase f to start French, francés, or to talk about English, English. So I hope you found this video useful. It was just a short introduction of the basic concepts that you're going to be applying for the writing, just to get a slight advantage. This does not mean that you don't have to study grammar and vocabulary. Of course you do, and please go back to the previous podcast to check a little bit more information on that. But with this podcast episode, what I wanted to do is show you just a couple of little tweaks that you can add to your writing task and that will improve your level. I hope you found it useful. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or ideas for the following podcasts. I look forward to hearing from you. Nos vemos.